My eyes were struggling to stay open against the never-ending sheets of rain, and my hands were tense from holding the steering wheel for almost 10 hours. It was just me, the storm, and the sound of tires slicing through puddles on the empty highway. At that moment, I noticed a faded neon sign blinking weakly in the distance through the haze of water on the windshield. It said Hillcrest Motor Lodge, but half of the letters were burned out, leaving behind a foreboding glow that was more of a warning than an invitation. The building sat alone on a patch of cracked asphalt, its windows dark, its roof drooping. The faint yellow light leaking from the lobby was the only indication of life. I pulled in, the uneasiness curling in my stomach overpowered by exhaustion. The smell of damp carpet, old books, and something slightly metallic like dried blood or rust hit me as soon as I stepped inside. The man at the front desk hardly gave me a glance. His voice was so low that I nearly missed it when he slid an old brass key across the counter. His skin was drawn and pale. He whispered, "Room 9. But his voice carried a weight, almost like remorse. He paused before responding. "It's better if you keep the TV off tonight," when I asked if the heater was operational. I thought it was a joke, so I half smiled. But he didn't return the smile. I turned away, and he simply lowered his eyes, his knuckles whitened against the desk. The hallway was long and eerily cramped, giving the impression that the walls were gradually closing in on you. Uneven shadows that appeared to extend too far along the peeling wallpaper were created by the buzzing and flickering light bulbs above. I could hear my own footsteps, but they sounded strange, like a faint echo, a little out of time, like someone was a step behind me. The air became noticeably colder as I went farther, and the carpet was worn and discolored in patches, some darker than others. I could just make out my breath in the dim light by the time I got to the last door. As soon as I opened the door, I was met by a blast of cold air from room 9, colder than anything outside during the storm. A sagging double bed, a crooked dresser with a cracked mirror, and a television so old that it had dials instead of buttons made the cramped room feel cramped. The one wooden chair in the far corner, however, that was ideally oriented to face the wall, was what most unnerved me. The wallpaper on the wall peeled off like old skin, but not the TV or the bed. It was the sort of detail you wish you hadn't noticed at first. I made an effort to get comfortable. Despite the bad reception, I unpacked my bag, took a shower, and then sat on the bed and browsed through my phone. The room seemed to muffle the sound of the storm outside, which should have been loud, leaving behind a deafening, unnatural silence. I heard it, a slow, deliberate creak of footsteps in the hallway at midnight. They were heavy, but in some way they echoed, getting louder and then fading again, as if someone were pacing right outside my door. When I opened it, the hallway was deserted, and the temperature outside had dropped. My stomach turned when I re-entered because the chair had moved. The bed was now in front of it. I tried to convince myself that I had only imagined its initial position as I stared at it for what seemed like minutes. As I shut off the light and climbed under the covers, my entire body tensed. However, sleep refused to come. I heard it then, a soft murmur from the room's corner. As my eyes adapted to the darkness, I believed I noticed a change in the shadows close to the chair. The language was different from anything I had ever heard, but the whispering got louder and more insistent. The television clicked on by itself, filling the room with static, and my heart hammered in my ears. The image then briefly changed to show a tall, dark figure standing at the foot of my bed with its head slightly cocked and its face hidden, seemingly studying me. The whispering ceased when the static returned. However, the chair was vacant. The silence grew oppressive as soon as the whispering ceased, encroaching from all sides of the room. All of my muscles were tense as I sat motionless on the bed, staring at the vacant chair. However, I secretly knew that it wasn't really empty, because whatever had been sitting there was still present and observing. In that moment, I saw it. Something tall and thin standing in the corner where the chair had been, gone before I could blink, as lightning flashed outside, filling the room with pale light. As the TV's static changed, creating hazy shapes that moved like underwater shadows, my chest constricted. Then there was the sound, slow, purposeful footsteps moving around the bed on the carpet. Nothing was there when I turned. Breathing became difficult for me as the smell of something rotten and damp earth filled my lungs. The TV image abruptly shifted to the dim, empty, and endless hallway outside my door. But while I was staring, someone moved toward my room from the far end. The lights in the hallway flickered and went out with each step it took, until only the light bulb above my door was still on. I rushed to the door and pulled on the handle, but it remained stuck, as though something was holding it closed from the other side. The sound of footsteps ceased. I heard slow, deep, and deliberate breathing when I put my ear to the wood. "Sit in the chair" was the only text that appeared on the screen when my phone spontaneously lit up in my pocket. My throat became parched, the air in the room became cold, and I could see my breath in the low light. The sound of the chair scraping across the floor toward me was so loud that it stopped inches from my knees. The TV flickered once more, and this time it showed me sitting in the chair with my head bent and my face expressionless and pale. I felt a heavy, invisible hand press down on my shoulder as I turned away from the screen, my heart racing. My body refused to move as the cold seeped into my bones. The whispering came back, but this time it was inside my head, obstructing my thoughts. I sat quietly in the corner, watching as my vision blurred and darkness crept in from the edges. Before it engulfed me entirely, I managed to catch one last image on the TV, the door to room 9 opening for the next visitor. When I opened my eyes again, I was still in the chair. My neck ached, my arms numb. The storm had stopped. The only sound was the low hum of the old television. On the screen was a view of room 9, but not as it was. The walls looked clean, new, freshly painted. The bed was neatly made. Sunlight streamed through curtains that didn't exist in my reality. And in that bright, perfect room sat me. But it wasn't me. The figure looked up into the camera with my face, pale, smiling faintly, eyes dark and glassy. It lifted a hand in a slow, deliberate wave. The static returned, swallowing the image, but the smile burned in my mind. I stumbled toward the door, my body heavy, but this time the handle turned freely. The hallway outside was wrong. No peeling wallpaper, no flickering lights. The carpet was pristine, the air warm. It smelled faintly of flowers. My footsteps echoed as I made my way toward the lobby. But no matter how far I walked, the hallway stretched endlessly. Doors lined the walls, each marked with a number, and every number was 9. The whispering returned, louder than before, swelling from behind every door. My head throbbed, my vision swayed. Then, one by one, the doors began to open. Shapes stepped out. Thin, crooked silhouettes, faces hidden in shadow. They didn't walk. They drifted toward me, silent except for the whispering that now poured directly into my skull. I turned to run, but room 9's door was right in front of me again, open and waiting. The television inside was already on. It showed the front desk clerk, sliding a brass key towards someone new, whispering, "Room 9." I felt that invisible weight on my shoulder again, guiding me backward into the darkness. My body gave in. As the door closed, the whispers faded into silence, and I understood. No one ever really leaves Hillcrest Motor Lodge. We just wait for the next guest. I'll stop here today. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your supernatural experience in the comments to become the topic of the next video.